This is the best-selling car in India in 2020, and for 2021, Maruti Suzuki's updated it just a bit because, hey, why mess with the winning formula? You can tell it apart by the new mesh grille with that little chrome bar and the fact that it now comes with dual-tone colors, but that's not all that Maruti Suzuki have changed. You also get a 4.2-inch color MID between the sporty twin-pod dials on top variants, as well as cruise control and an updated Smart Play Studio system. It barely freshens up the cabin, but they're nice additions nonetheless. It's still a comfortable cabin and in all black, reasonably sporty. The Swift has always had decent space and headroom on offer at the rear, but the common complaint of the lack of AC vents still hasn't been addressed. Its feature set isn't as long as its chief rival, with only autofold ORVMs being added this time around. Though at 268 litres, its boot is the largest in the segment. Adding to the two airbags as standard, AGS models equipped with the AMT gearbox gain valuable safety aids in the form of ESP and hill hold assist, though the Indian Swift's 2-star global NCAP rating is still something to think about. Surprisingly, for a mid-cycle refresh, Maruti hasn't just stopped with those subtle tweaks inside and out. The biggest change of the 2021 Swift is actually under the hood. Maruti swapped out the old 1.2-litre naturally aspirated K12B for the version that comes with 2 injectors per cylinder, and it's called the DualJet. It's also got an increased compression ratio, lower friction pistons and revised cooling, all to make for an engine that's smoother and more efficient. Just how efficient? Maruti Suzuki claims 23.2 kmpl for the manual transmission Swift on nearly 2 kmpl more than before. In our test, the new Swift managed to better the old one by under a kmpl, but that is saying something considering our traffic conditions have just gotten worse, and our test route includes the same stretch of traffic roads that we used back in 2018. So just how smooth is this new engine? Well, at idle, which is at about 600 RPM with the AC off, it's so silent that you do have to prod the throttle every now and then just to make sure it's running. And you might find yourself in that situation more often than you would like because of the automatic start-stop that Maruti has fitted to this car, in the interest of efficiency, of course. The system does work as it should. In fact, it's not over-eager as some of these Maruti systems have been in the past. So if you're stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, the first time that you stop, you will find that the system puts the engine off. But the second and third time, chances are it's not going to do that. So it becomes a less taxing experience overall. A happy byproduct is that performance has gone up too, with the added 7 PS of power and supposedly flatter torque peaking a little later, showing through in our performance testing. The 0 to 100 kmph times are especially impressive, finally dropping the Swift into the low 10s. It also feels quite smooth as you run through the revs. Of course, this engine has a 6,200 RPM redline, and it does like being revved. You've got all that power right at the top, and if you're the kind of person who drives their car hard, you will definitely enjoy the little bit extra that this engine has over the old one, especially up top. If you're a regular car buyer, you will like that slight edge in NVH that this engine has. And of course, you will really like the fact that you can potter around in a lower gear than, say, you would need in any of its turbo petrol competitors, just because of the extra edge in throttle response that a naturally aspirated engine gives you. For example, if you do find yourself at a speed breaker in second gear, and you have to pick up from about 1,000 revs, it does that with zero complaints at all. It actually will speed pretty quickly. Surprisingly, for a midlife facelift, they've also upgraded the front and rear brakes. So the front has larger disc rotors, and the drum brake at the rear is larger as well. Unfortunately, our test car doesn't seem to reflect that change in its braking figures, though we do hope to be updated with a better set of figures in the future. While feel at the pedal has improved, what could explain the longer braking distances is the fact that the tire sizes haven't changed, and as such, with the greater stopping power, tend to lock up more easily. A common complaint on this third-gen Swift has been the light steering that's slightly twitchy at speed and which sometimes has a hard time returning to center, which makes U-turns in the city a little bit of a chore. Well, Maruti's addressed that with this update. They've tweaked the software that controls the electromechanical power steering to include a better returnability, and from what we've seen, it definitely works. All these changes have added about 20 kgs to the curb weight of the Swift, but it's still one of the lightest cars in its segment at about 905 kg for the top-of-the-line AMT version. That still does mean that it's one of the most fun cars in the segment, despite the fact that it feels like it's gotten a little soft over the years. And despite the fact that it does feel a little undertired, especially now with the stronger brakes, where you feel the ABS kicking in a lot earlier, will hold its line really well through a corner as long as you don't push it, because you do reach that point of understeer quite early. Despite that extra softness, damping really isn't the best in the game, and you will feel it in the way that the Swift handles broken roads. Sometimes it just doesn't have the breadth to deal with some of those bigger potholes or ruts in the road, and it comes through with a jolt, and it's a thud that doesn't sound good. While prices for the Swift have risen in this update, as has the level of the competition, for most people the combination of its frugality, easy-to-drive nature and Maruti Suzuki service network are a formula that's hard to resist. And the updates to the Swift definitely make its strengths even stronger, though it no longer is the benchmark it used to be, even if the sales charts have a completely different story to tell.